It all started with one phone call. And trust me, this call was not just a simple complaint. It was a storm waiting to hit, and I was standing right in the middle of it. People think HOA complaints are small, silly, or just about grass being too long. But this one was different. This was about power, control, and ego clashing right at the heart of our community. The woman who made the call was known around town. People whispered her name with a mix of fear and annoyance. Karen. Yes, that Karen. The one who believed she was the boss of everyone. Even when she wasn't. She was the kind of neighbor who thought rules were made for others, not her. She called the city council because she believed she had been wronged. And guess who picked up the case? Me. Because I wasn't just another member of the council. I was the chairman. Now let me take you back. You need to understand the story, the emotion, the fire that led to that one phone call shaking the entire neighborhood. Karen wasn't new to drama. If you ask any neighbor, they'll roll their eyes and tell you she's been causing scenes for years. If someone painted their fence blue, she complained it was too bright. If kids laughed too loud outside, she claimed it was disturbing her peace. And if the HOA board made a decision, she always had something negative to say. She lived in a world where her opinion was the law, and if you disagreed, you became her target. But this time, things had gone too far. It all began with a parking space. Sounds small, right? Just a parking spot. But in Karen's world, a parking space was not just a rectangle painted on concrete. It was territory, it was status. And in her mind, it was hers to control. One of our residents, a single mom named Julia, had recently gotten a new car. She parked in the community lot, in a spot that was not assigned to anyone but was open for residents. The next morning, Julia found a note taped to her windshield. It wasn't polite. It was a warning. In bold letters, it said, "This space belongs to me. Move your car or face consequences." Signed, Karen. Julia was shaken. She came to the HOA board for help, and as chairman, I knew this was serious. Parking spots weren't owned by anyone. They were first come, first serve. But Karen had decided otherwise. When we reached out to her, hoping for a calm conversation, she exploded. Her voice was sharp, her words cut deep, and she shouted about her rights. She didn't just argue, she threatened. She said she would call the city, she would sue, she would make our lives miserable. And guess what? That's exactly what she did. The day Karen called the city council, I was in my office reviewing reports. My phone buzzed, and my assistant told me the city clerk had a situation. When I picked up, the clerk sounded exhausted. "We have a resident from your community on the line. She's demanding immediate action. She says the HOA is abusing power." I knew instantly who it was. My heart sank, but at the same time, something inside me rose up. This wasn't just about a parking space anymore. This was about the truth. When I got on the call, Karen didn't even say hello. She launched straight into her attack. "This HOA is corrupt. They're targeting me, the only person brave enough to stand up to them. They're stealing spaces, making up rules, and silencing voices." Her voice cracked through the speaker, loud and furious. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was fighting for justice. But I knew the story. I knew the real victims. Julia, who only wanted to park her car in peace. The neighbors who walked on eggshells around Karen. The families who avoided conflict because they didn't want to become her next target. So I let her speak. I let her pour out every accusation. I let her anger echo through the room. And when she finally stopped, waiting for my defense, I took a deep breath and spoke as calmly as I could. "Karen, you don't own the parking lot. You don't own the community. And you don't own the truth. The city doesn't bow to one person's ego. We're here to protect the rights of everyone. Every single neighbor matters. Not just you." The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time, she didn't have an immediate comeback. But don't think the story ended there. No, this was just the beginning. Karen wasn't the type to back down. She was the type to reload and come back louder. A week later, she sent letters to the city, the HOA, and even the mayor's office. She claimed she was being bullied, that she was a victim of discrimination, that she was living in fear. And as chairman, every one of those letters landed on my desk. Each letter was thicker, more dramatic, than the last. Each one painted her as a hero of a battle that didn't exist. She wanted attention. She wanted power. She wanted the spotlight. And she got it, because soon neighbors began to take sides. Some were tired of her antics and wanted her removed from the HOA entirely. Others, who didn't know the full story, believed her words and thought maybe she was being treated unfairly. Division spread like wildfire, and suddenly, a single parking spot had turned into a neighborhood war. This is where leadership is tested. This is where character is revealed. Anyone can smile when times are easy. Anyone can sit in the chairman's seat when meetings are calm. But when a storm hits, when the community is divided, when one person's voice tries to drown out the rest, that's when you find out who really stands strong. I had a choice. I could fight Karen with the same anger she used against us, or I could lead with truth, patience, and fairness. So I chose to call a town hall meeting. The room was packed. Every seat was taken. Neighbors stood against the walls, and the air was thick with tension. On one side, people whispered about Karen, rolling their eyes, shaking their heads. On the other side, a small group sat with folded arms, ready to defend her. And right in the middle, Karen herself sat tall, a smug smile on her face, as if she had already won. When I stepped up to the podium, I felt the weight of every eye in the room. My heart beat faster, but I remembered why I was there. Not for ego, not for power, but for the community, for the people who deserve peace, fairness, and respect. And then I spoke from the heart. This community is not about one voice. It's about all of us. We are neighbors, not enemies. We are supposed to lift each other up, not tear each other down. We cannot let drama control us. We cannot let anger divide us. We have to choose respect, even when we disagree. The room grew quiet. People leaned in. Some nodded. Even Karen's small group of supporters shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Enough, Karen. We're tired of the drama. Julia deserves respect. This isn't your neighborhood alone. The tide had turned. The community had found its voice. And it wasn't Karen's. That night, the meeting ended not with chaos, but with unity. For the first time in a long time, neighbors stood together. For the first time, Karen realized she wasn't the center of the universe. And for the first time, I felt the weight of leadership ease just a little. So the next time someone tells you one voice can't make a difference, remember Karen. Because one voice can divide, yes. But one voice, spoken with truth, can unite. Backhand index pointing right. If you want to hear what happened next, when Karen tried her biggest move yet, stick around for Section 2. The battle wasn't over, and trust me, the ending will shock you. The town hall meeting might have ended with peace, but peace around Karen never lasted long. It was like standing in the eye of a storm. For one moment, everything felt calm, and then suddenly, the wind shifted, the clouds darkened, and chaos returned with double force. After the meeting, people thought Karen would step back. They thought maybe she had learned something. They thought maybe she would finally let the community breathe. But Karen wasn't built that way. She wasn't someone who could accept defeat. She wasn't someone who could admit she was wrong. No, she was someone who needed control, who needed the spotlight, who needed the last word. And so, just 2 weeks later, she made her biggest move yet. One morning, I received an envelope at my office. It wasn't just another angry letter. This one had an official stamp. When I opened it, my hands froze. It was a formal complaint filed with the city attorney's office. Karen had taken the fight to a whole new level. In her complaint, she accused the HOA of corruption, misuse of funds, discrimination, and even harassment. She claimed we were targeting her, silencing her, and violating her rights as a homeowner. It was filled with exaggerations, half-truths, and outright lies, but on paper, it looked serious. I knew this wasn't just about a parking space anymore. This was about reputation, trust, and the future of our community. When the board gathered to review the complaint, the room was tense. Some members were frustrated, slamming their hands on the table. How long are we going to put up with this? One asked. Others looked worried, whispering about legal fees, court dates, and bad press. I sat quietly for a moment, letting everyone vent. Then I spoke. We can't let anger guide us. We can't let fear control us. Karen wants chaos. She thrives on it. But we're not going to feed it. We're going to fight this the right way, with truth, with patience, and with unity. It wasn't the easy path, but it was the only path. As weeks went by, the investigation began. City officials visited our community. They looked at records, financial statements, meeting notes. They spoke to residents. They walked through the parking lot where it all started. And every time they showed up, Karen followed them like a shadow, pointing fingers, making dramatic claims, acting like the hero of some movie only she was watching. Neighbors grew restless. Some avoided her entirely, taking different routes just to dodge her daily lectures. Others confronted her, leading to heated arguments in the middle of the street. One afternoon, she stood outside her house with a sign that read, "HOA corruption must end." She waved it at cars, shouted at passing neighbors, and even called the local news. It was exhausting. It was draining. But it was also revealing, because the more Karen shouted, the more the truth came out. One day, the city investigators called me in for a private meeting. They had reviewed every document, every complaint, every claim. They asked tough questions, and I answered each one with honesty. I laid out the facts, no drama, no exaggeration, just the truth. After hours of discussion, one of the investigators leaned back in his chair and sighed. "You know," he said, "we deal with a lot of complaints. Some are serious. Some are nonsense. This one feels personal. It doesn't look like corruption. It looks like conflict. A neighbor who refuses to accept rules." I nodded. "That's exactly what it is." He gave me a small smile. "Don't worry, Chairman. We'll handle this fairly." But fairness didn't mean the storm was over. When Karen found out the city wasn't rushing to shut down the HOA, she exploded. She showed up at the next board meeting with a stack of papers, slamming them on the table. "I will not be silenced. You're all against me, and I won't stop until justice is served." Her voice echoed through the room, but something strange happened that night. For the first time, neighbors didn't just sit quietly. They didn't look down at their shoes, waiting for the storm to pass. They stood up, one by one. "Karen, this has gone too far. We're tired of living in fear of your complaints. This isn't justice. This is harassment. You don't speak for us." Her face turned red, her hands shook, but the voices kept coming. Dozens of neighbors, people who had once stayed silent, now spoke together, and their unity was louder than her anger. That night was a turning point. Not because Karen disappeared. She didn't. But because the community finally realized they were stronger together. For too long, they had let one voice dominate. For too long, they had let drama dictate peace. But now, they chose something different. And as chairman, I felt proud. Not proud because I had won, but proud because the people had found their strength. Weeks later, the city officially closed Karen's complaint. They found no corruption, no misuse, no discrimination. They sent her a letter explaining that her claims were unsupported. When I read that letter, I felt relief, but also sadness. Relief because the fight was finally over. Sadness because I knew Karen wouldn't accept the truth. Sure enough, she didn't. She crumpled the letter, threw it in the trash, and told anyone who would listen that the system was rigged. But this time, fewer people listened. This time, her words didn't echo. They faded, because the community had moved on. Karen still lives here. She still complains sometimes. She still writes letters. But she doesn't control the narrative anymore. She doesn't silence her neighbors anymore. She doesn't hold the power she once thought she had. And me? I learned one of the greatest lessons of leadership. You don't win by shouting louder. You don't win by crushing your enemy. You win by standing steady, by choosing truth, by respecting the people you serve. Leadership isn't about power. It's about trust. And trust isn't built in big victories. It's built in small moments, when you listen, when you stand firm, when you refuse to let fear divide you. So if you ever face a Karen in your life, someone who thrives on drama, someone who tries to control the story, someone who pushes you into the storm, remember this. You don't have to fight fire with fire. You can fight fire with patience, with truth, with community. because in the end, drama fades. Lies collapse. But truth? Truth stands forever. Backhand index pointing right. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with a Karen in your life? Someone who tried to take control. Someone who created chaos. Someone who tested your patience? Share your story in the comments. Let's build a community where voices are heard, respect is valued, and truth always wins.